All right, so this is the deep speaking voice time. I got a bit of a cold, so hopefully the cough doesn't get too much on the way. So my name is Pete Chestna. I'm with Veracode. I've been there for 10.5 years, since almost the very beginning, a couple months after we started. So just show of hands, who here is a developer in the audience? Awesome. Operations? Any security folks that want to raise their hand? Oh, all right, rock on. QA? Couple, all right. So as Cody was ending his talk, what I do is very much what he talked about in that last bit, going out and talking about the DevOps journey that Veracode took, because we started as Waterfall, moved to Agile, moved to DevOps, so a lot of personal experience with that, and I help other companies roll out AppSec programs that take advantage of the kind of DevOps mentality and how to get faster with what they do. So we're going to talk about why application security is important. Anyone here have an AppSec program they know about? Nobody? Nobody has an application security program? All right, a couple people. Any Veracode customers out here? Oh, room full of prospects, that's awesome. All right. How DevOps is changing the way we do application development and how security doesn't work in that model, right? And what needs to change and how we're going to measure that. So let's talk about why AppSec is important. Applications are risky. The applications that we write here. So let me take a look at that stat. 35% of software that we looked at, hard-coded passwords in it. Who thinks that's a good idea? Crypto problems, redirect attacks. We don't do a good job of thinking about the way we build software from a security aspect. OWASP top 10, anyone familiar with that one? Right, so this is, right. So of the applications that we look at how many of those violate that top 10. And you know, SQL injection has been on that list forever and it's super simple to fix. According to DHS, 90% of attacks involve the application layer. So the stuff that we write contributes to how companies are attacked. And when I go into companies, usually they're like, well, let's just do the crown jewels. Let's protect the important stuff. Let's do the really important applications. But if you think about it, Target was attacked through a billing application from one of their HVAC suppliers. It didn't come through Target.com or any of that other stuff. They got into their network through some billing app that they didn't think about the security of. Similarly with JP Morgan Chase. So this was a fundraising website that was built by one of their vendors. It went up and it got attacked and exfiltrated information about their customers. And Community Health was an open SSL bug. So go back to that talk yesterday about third-party software, open source software. As developers, and this happens all the time, right? We come in and we say, hey, I'm going to use this piece of software, whether that's Struts or what have you. And then we say, all right, I'm done. It works. And unless it stops working, we don't generally go back and say, well, is there an update to this? Should I upgrade this? Because we're too busy building the first-party software that kind of sews it all together. And the fact is that the longer that software sits out there, the more vulnerabilities are found. And when those vulnerabilities are found, now let's take a really extreme case. I was talking to a customer with this exact problem. JBoss 422. They put it in their software like 10 years ago. It works. Well, now we're on JBoss 7 something, I think, and now that collections problem, the deserialization problem happens in JBoss. They need to upgrade their version of JBoss to take care of this. Well, now this is a multi-year project that they can't afford to do. Moving between 4 and 7 requires repackaging and recoding and all kinds of stuff that if they had paid that cost all along, it wouldn't have been an issue. But now that they have to pay it all at once, they basically have to shut development down for a couple of years. So the mandate from the business, right? Faster. I need it faster. And make it better too. And this is always a trade-off, and as Mo says, you only get to pick 2, right? So it puts the whole business under pressure and compresses the timelines that we work under. So, in your traditional waterfall development, 1 to 4 releases a year if you're lucky. Agile, maybe a couple times a month. And DevOps, we're doing over 100 a year, right? Now I love this quote from Nathan Harvey. especially, and I talked to my organization about this as well, it's not about just the development and the IT and QA. The whole company has to rethink how they do business, right? So it's about a high velocity organization. I have to change how I interact with my support people. I have to interact with finance. I have to change how I interact with everyone in the company. Has to really get behind this model and change the way they work. So if we take a look at this agile process here, everyone's familiar with this, right? Anyone not? Okay. Really, security is on the outside of this, right? They're on the outside looking in. They're hoping that you guys listen to them, and really, they're fighting for budget. So usually in a security program, it's at the end, worst possible time. I mean, this is like, guys, this is like motherhood and apple pie, right? When we do quality at the end? Do we code? And then hopefully that, this waterfall model where it gets to QA and it passes. We don't do that anymore because we know, writing unit tests and doing quality at the same time is really important and really saves us time. It's the same thing with security. We wait till the end, and we'll get into this in a second. We get to the end and we're like, oh my God, there's a month worth of work for us to do. And now what? Now we got this release candidate. I want to get it out to the field. We say, well, how about we just do the important stuff? Hey, security guys, what's the most important thing? Can I just do the top two? And then what happens to the rest of it? It sits in the backlog at the bottom and stays there forever. So this is how the security guys feel, right? This magical DevOps unicorn pooping out all this good stuff into production. It is awesome. And they're left cleaning up that mess. And if we think about from a technology point of view, how we have transformed, and this is going to apply to the security guys now, right? Waterfall, we're humping things up the hill every single time. You know what? Because I do it once a year. Yeah, it sucks. Yeah, it's hard, but economically, it doesn't make sense for me to pour 2 weeks worth of effort into automating this. Whereas we get to Agile now, we're going to start to stick some machinery in here, right? So we're going to start to get faster, still people in there, but when we get to DevOps, man, all bets are off. If I can automate it, I'm going to. I don't care how much it costs, because in the long run, this is going to save my ass. So, AppSec programs. Just look what your AppSec program. Gate. It's a gate at the end. Or maybe this. None shall pass. You get your release candidate and say, yeah, no, sorry guys. And you know what? As developers, we know it's coming, right? And yet we still want to be an ostrich about this problem. So which outcome do you guys see here? Is it this one? Hey, there's a security gate. Well, look, there's no fence. I'm just going to drive around it. We either go through an exception process where we're accepting all kinds of risk on behalf of the business because we need to get it out, or they don't have a mandate. They can't make us do it, so we just ignore them. Or is it this one? Right? Oh, Christ. Now we do have to go spend that month to go fix all these things. And if you think about this again, if we did it earlier, it would be better. We know this, and yet we still try to work around this. And it hurts our credibility as developers, as an organization, as a team. So here's our DevOps process. And typically, that's where security is, right? Stick it at the end. Let's not worry about it. In fact, it's even worse than that. We stick the whole thing at the end when we have that release candidate in hand, if we're not doing continuous deployment. But really, this is what we need. We need to think about it all over the place. Now, that has some things that are going to be required from our security team and some things that are required from us. So here's a strategy. Again, I work with some of the biggest companies in the world. We're rolling out application security programs. And these are some of the things that I talked about with them constantly. Integration and automation. There are ways for us as development teams to integrate this security check to fail fast in the DevOps model. Training, this is where our security guys need to come in. Remediation coaching. So who here has a degree in computer science or related? Yeah, and keep your hand up if you actually got any security training as part of that. Almost no college has security training as part of their degrees. We're taught to think about Big O and really how to write complex systems, but not how to do it securely. Security champions, we'll get into that in a second here. Transparency and measurement, this is what all engineers love, right? And visibility and operations. So this is the model that I use in my DevOps teams for building our software, right? So here's our backlog developer comes in and does their stuff. Now, we're going to build and test as a developer, and by the way, I'm going to run static analysis. So static analysis, there's kind of two ways of doing this. You either do it on source code, you do it on binary. Veracode, we do it on binaries. But the important thing is my developers are required to do this prior to check-in. You are not allowed to check in insecure code into my repository. We're a security company. Security is job number one for us, right? Now, I have an application security program that's 10 years old. I'll stand it up against anyone in the world for its maturity. This is an aspirational goal for most. So now per check-in, this is a microservice that we've written, very small. So we hit our pipeline now, and we're going to run our unit testing, and we're going to run static analysis. This takes a couple of minutes for a microservice. And now we have results. Now this is, of course, the CI portion of our pipeline, right? So now I can continuously integrate, and I know whether or not I have something that can move to the next step. If it doesn't, I'm going to break the build. I'll synchronize things to backlog, say, hey, nice try. Something was wrong in your process. If it does, then we're going to move on now. Now we're going to move it into our QA and then eventually to our staging environments and run some more analysis. So we'll run regression testing, ad hoc testing, what have you. We'll run all this in an automated fashion. Dynamic analysis as well. So think of this as an automated pen test. So penetration test, anyone not familiar with that? So hackers coming in. So this is done with software. And now I have another result. And if that passes, we're going to move it along the process. So if I was in QA, I go to staging. If I'm staging, I go to production. And this, of course, is the CD portion of the pipeline. So what you get is a very hands-off, lights-out from the time that, with the one exception, we do peer code reviews. So let's say I got woken up at 2 o'clock in the morning. I had to make a code change to get it into production. I have to wake up one peer. They look at my code. From there on out, it falls into this process. Now, as we look at this, where's pen testing happen? Where does secure code review happen? My assertion, and what we do at Veracode, is that that happens prior to check-in. Check-in to trunk. So maybe I'm going to create a branch, right? So let's say I go through grooming and the guys say, hey, this touches one of the really valuable controls. It's authentication, authorization, maybe it's crypto or something. I need to have a good look at this. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, all right, well, fine. I'm going to check that in. We'll deploy it somewhere. But I'm going to check it into a branch for you guys to go and take a look at. They can run their pen testing on it. Take as much time as they want, because all that happens behind that barrier of going to trunk. Because what happens once I hit trunk, I want all that automated. All right, training. So this is where the security teams can help, right? We weren't trained. We have people that have been doing this for, like me, 25 years and longer, that were never trained in this, that need to be trained, right? So help us. And the way I think about it, and the way I urge companies to do this, is to think about this as a metadata driven. So once I've taken a look at my applications and I see what my largest problem is, let's say it's a big surprise, it's SQL injection, what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill a room with pizza and developers, and I'm going to talk at them for an hour about specifically the problems that they are having in the organization. So I'm not making this whole room take, a 2-hour secure Java coding course, of which you'll probably get, 15 minutes out of it. I remember going to the bookstore and buying books on, some new framework or what have you, and you spend $60 to $100 on a book this thick, and you find like 10 pages worth of content that you really needed in that book. It's the same thing with these courses. So let's make it practical. Let's make it targeted. For the security guys, hey, go get smart, guys. Read the DevOps handbook. Read the Phoenix project. Start to understand the world that we're living in and what we're trying to accomplish. So this is really two sides, right? Both sides need to work together. From a strategy point of view, remediation coaching. So again, we weren't trained in this stuff. Who here knows what cross-site scripting is? Oh, wow. All right. SQL injection? All right. Awesome. Usually when development teams get these results, they're like, huh? What's that thing? Right? I don't understand what this is. So at Veracode, part of the service is you get to sit down with someone who's an expert in development and expert in security, and they will explain these results to you and explain how these things get owned and how you can protect yourself. And we have measured, so we have a centralized software as a service. We've scanned over 2.5 trillion lines of code, 2.5 times improvement if they use this service, if they get to talk to someone. So you're not out there, Googling the answer. Next thing is security champions. So security teams typically in a company, at small companies it's one guy if it's anybody, and application security is not the only thing that they care about. They have a whole bunch of stuff. They have endpoint security and network security and all kinds of stuff that they need to worry about, so this is a small portion of their job. They don't have time to cover tens to dozens of DevOps teams going on after the software. So what we did at Veracode is we created a security champions program. So they become the eyes and ears of security. They get specialized training. So there's a 2-day intensive course where we talk to them and teach them the basic security concepts, CIA and the like, threat modeling, grooming guidelines. So if you're looking at a story, so when you're doing your grooming, usually we're doing that for understanding so we can do our planning poker and figure out how big this task is and make sure that we understand it. Well, we also need to understand it from a security point of view. What does this need? Can it fall into the standard process where I go through static analysis and go through the pipeline? Or does it need something special? Do I need a security code review? Do I need pen testing? What needs to happen here? So this is where they learn which way that needs to fall. They learn how to do secure code reviews. Now they're not left on their own. We have them do it with someone shoulder surfing them to teach them the ways of doing this stuff. Basic security controls and what they are and why they're important. And we do capture the flag exercises. So in the lunchroom once a week, people bring their laptops. We have a guided exercise. They're like, okay, here, let's go try to capture the flag on this particular exercise. It teaches you the other side of it about how to attack something. So you have that empathy and understanding of how things are attacked. And when to escalate. So we don't know everything. Those security champions don't know everything. But when it gets to something they don't understand, they know to escalate to our security guys over here. Measurement. This stuff doesn't work. AppSec programs don't take off and don't take root unless you measure them. If it's not part of your goals, so here's the thing that happens. We sell to the security guys. So these guys over here say, yeah, love this stuff, let's do security. And then we come in to the very bottom levels of the development organization, you guys, and say, hey, we're told you guys are going to go do this static analysis thing. You're like, what the hell is this and why do I need to do it? It doesn't appear in my goals, I don't want to, right? So we need executive buy-in and we need to talk about the organization and tie it to your corporate goals such that it affects your pay. If it affects your pay, you're going to care about it a whole lot more, right? The company can't just say, oh yeah, I need you to do more work and by the way, there's no more time for this. The company needs to say it is a trade-off. I do application security because it's important, therefore I'm willing to say we're going to go slower in another area. And really, once you get going in this, it's like DevOps, right? So Cote said you need to slow down first and get your CI stuff settled. It's the same thing with security. You need to slow down first and integrate this stuff, but once you have, you actually find that you go faster. So remember that gate where I hit it and I got this month worth of work? It doesn't happen anymore, right? I don't have that problem with my development teams. So you can build yourself to that world. Transparency, so we need to report out at a regular level, not just at the individual development teams, but at the C level, right? If the CIO is serious about this, then he should be measuring it. Scanning, so again, motherhood and apple pie, save and compile, we do it dozens of times a day. It's the same thing with security. If you can get it fast enough, why wouldn't you do those checks? You run your unit tests when you run your compile, it takes seconds. It gives you an idea that the stuff that you're writing is actually going to work. Well, it's the same thing with security. If you can do that and build that into your process, the more you are doing these scans is because you care. You're measuring it because you care. We take a lot of pride in our work, right? Who takes pride in their work? Half of you, and half of you aren't awake yet. So operational visibility. So the strategy here is about understanding things as they run in production. There's a new thing in application security called RASP. This is a runtime application self-protection. It's something that sits in a VM. It watches code execute. This is kind of the next level of WAF, a smart WAF, where it sits and watches code execute. It can see a SQL injection or cross-site scripting about to happen. And what it can do is then say, all right, I can see this. I'm going to log the fact that this happened, but I'm going to return an empty record set. So as you think about maybe protecting the things while you're trying to fix them, this is one of the ways you can look at. Dynamic analysis. Now, until you get to the point where you're building infrastructure as you deploy, right? So your CD environments are all identical because they all come from code that gets checked into your repository. Those that are sitting in organizations where I have physical hardware, so my QA environment, my staging environment, my production environment, those are never the same. They're not maintained by the same people. They don't have the same patch levels. None of that stuff is identical. So what ends up happening as you do these deployments is, well, if I'm deploying to QA, then this. If I deploy to stage, then this other thing. And production, this. So, those things deviate and migrate away from each other. And the one that's the closest to what you want is obviously in production. So doing dynamic analysis in production to make sure that your stuff is configured properly, that you're not leaking information. The last thing you want an attacker to know is that you're using JBoss 422 because they know exactly what they can do to go own you now. Or that you're using Tomcat thus and such, right? You don't want to leak that kind of information, and that's what dynamic analysis can help you to do. And you need to be running that in your production environment. And of course, we talked about this earlier, open source vulnerabilities, right? As developers, we need to make sure that this is part of the technical debt that we pay down every single sprint. So looking at movement of libraries, right? And moving our software along those paths and doing it while it's cheap. Because jumping from JBoss 4 to JBoss 7 is Herculean. And the company can't afford it anymore, but would have gladly paid to have it done all along. So once those vulnerabilities are detected, now I can just jump to that next library, that next version, and it doesn't cost me anything because I've already paid all the other costs. So critically important here. So if we look at a holistic security program, what you see is training across the spectrum. We train our developers all the time. We talk about incidents that have occurred in the industry, how they got owned, what caused them, how they could have been protected. Static analysis, the second you have something that can compile, right? The second I have a compilation unit, I want to start doing static analysis and take a look at my code. Is it good? Do I have SQL injection here? Do I have cross-site scripting, et cetera? Dynamic analysis, as soon as I have something I can deploy, right? Dynamic analysis requires a running system. So as soon as I have something like that, let's start looking at it from that angle. These are just tests. They're just results, right? We can integrate those into our pipelines. And you saw before in my CI/CD example that I synchronized a backlog. Security results are bugs, right? They happen to be non-functional, but I treat them the same. They sit in my triage queue. We triage them every morning. Anything that we find, functional or non, it sits in that queue and gets treated the same. That RASP, I start that in our staging environment. So you can run this in either protection mode or in logging mode. So I can start to see these things as people run ad hoc testing on my environment that maybe something occurs, or I run some pen testing. So the security team down here at the bottom has a huge role to play in all this, and they need to support us, right? And we need to support them. So at the beginning, they're helping us with threat modeling. They're helping us understand whether we're doing secure design and help us with our security grooming. In the middle, this huge middle phase where we're actually writing stuff, helping us fix what we find, either by actual remediation or maybe we're doing mitigations. Maybe we have a WAF that we want to use and we have some compensating control that we're going to put in place here. They need to help us understand what does that mean. There is still risk associated. There's what's called residual risk from these controls. So we need to understand those and we need to work together on those. And at the end, manual pen testing, red team, those kind of activities occur at the very end of that process. So to wrap up here, trying to bridge that gap, so you make code, not war. Working with our security teams, we need to integrate them. So Nathan Harvey has a great talk around DevOps where he talks about the entire organization. So we don't call it, you'll see Veracode call it DevSecOps, but for us, QA, IT, operations, security, we're all working together in the same team, right? We're all delivering value to the business. From our side, from the development team side, right, scanning early and often, we need to do that integration and automation, take those trainings, ask for help. Security guys need to understand DevOps and they need to help us with this process such that we can go and be as fast as we want to be, and they need to fit into that model. So, I talk to a lot of companies that all they do is pen testing. If you use an external organization, it's going to take you months to do this process. If you have an internal, it's still days. It's so expensive. It's not something you want to do on everything. So they need to right-size their security and understand that, yes, there's a trade-off with risk. We could pen test everything, but that's not practical. So be there to help train us on secure coding practices. Thank you.